Welcome to Voices of Deconversion. We share the inspirational stories of deconversion told by former Christians who are now atheist or agnostic. Our stories remind us we're in it together. They encourage us as we discover who we are and help us to embrace who we become.
Welcome to the one-year anniversary episode of the Voices of Deconversion podcast. I'm very excited to have you with me today. It was 1 year ago this week. It was actually Easter weekend of 2017 that I launched the podcast. So I wanted to do something different, something to reflect back on our first year of podcasting. A goal that I had for the podcast from the beginning was to encourage those who are deconverting. And if you've listened to the podcast for any amount of time, you'll know that I really love quotes. So I decided to combine those ideas together and put together a compilation of quotes from the podcast. So there are several questions that I ask every single time I do an interview. Some questions I don't get to every single time, but one of the questions that I really like, that I feel like kind of gets at the heart of what the podcast is all about, is when I ask our guests at the very end of the podcast, when you think about someone who's going through the deconversion process right now, what encouragement or piece of guidance would you give that person? The answers I get are always so uplifting and inspiring to me. So that's the question that I chose to use for this episode. So what I've done is I've taken each guest's answer to that question, all of the guests we've had for the past year, and I've put them together back to back so that you can hear each guest's response to that question. Their answers average about 30 seconds, but some are shorter and some are longer. Since my interviews are one-on-one, whenever I ask the guest this question, it's their individual response and their individual words of encouragement to you. What I think is cool about compiling them all together like this is it kind of gives a sense of a community. In this case, a worldwide community, a variety of people from all different backgrounds, all with unique words of encouragement for those of us who are going through deconversion. There are definitely some themes and things that come up more than once, but what I really enjoyed when I listened back to these answers was how really, even though there are some themes, each guest had a very unique message for the listener. So if you're someone who is going through deconversion or has just come through deconversion, well, here's a year's worth of responses from a community of people, most of whom have also deconverted. Here are their answers to the question, what encouragement or piece of guidance would they give you?
Think for yourself, I think, is the best thing. Even in my kids' books, the kids' books don't preach to the kids. In fact, in all of my kids' books, I tell the readers, don't take your pastor or your teacher or your parents' word. Don't even take this book's word for it. You have to decide and you have to think for yourself. And that's what free thinking actually means. You do your own thinking.
You got to get your foundation. And that new foundation is going to be knowledge. It's going to be factual information. It's going to be understanding. It's going to be, understanding the context, the history of stuff. Because like I said, when you have those moments in the middle of the night when you're, feeling that emotional draw back to something, you need to be able to remind yourself that, wait, no, there's a reason that I'm where I am today. I'm at this point of non-belief for a reason. Non-believers and other humanists especially tend to be so compassionate, that if you can connect to some humanist non-believers, it would be a very real asset to your life.
Oh, wow. It gets better. It so gets better. And right now, with so many groups out there, if you don't want to be active, if you want to be super active, if you identify as, in the LGBTQ, etc., communities, if you're Black, Hispanic, Asian, etc., it doesn't matter. There's a group out there for you. They are out there. Get out there, go connect, go talk to people, go connect with these people in ways that are personal to you. And you will find usually you will find a very comfortable form of home or family, especially if you've been rejected by yours. It has gotten so much better. So connect online, and as soon as you can, go find them offline.
Well, the biggest thing is that you're not alone. And, especially since that 2008 period, resources, and with social media, it is, you almost can't feel alone, because there's so much out there in terms of being able to connect with other people who have had similar experiences.
Explore the world around you. Read a lot. Find stuff that interests you and really explore it. Find what makes you feel excited and happy, and trust that, unless you're a psychopath or something, that, it will be good for you and good for the people around you. You can do it. That's what I would say. You can do it. There is so much to read that can help you out and give you new ideas. You can just bust open your life and live a bigger, more exciting life. And that you're a good person to begin with.
I think one of the most important things to realize is that they are not alone. We are legion. There are so many of us. And that I would encourage folks to be true to themselves. Be true to themselves. And in that process, look for those who are like-minded. One, be true to yourself. Secondly, recognize you are not alone. Third, look for us. We're out there.
I guess what I would say to somebody that, like you said, that's a really scary thing to me, to have to pretend that you're going through the motions in church and you're afraid maybe that your family's going to look down on you. I never really was too worried about that. I would say just know that you're still a really good person deep down. You're still the same person. Your family and friends should still want to spend time with you and appreciate your views and your new views, and not to be afraid. Just don't be afraid to be yourself, because you're going to be so much happier at the end of it. You'll be absolutely happier. I feel so much freer in my everyday life than, I think I probably would be if I just was pretending because I didn't want my grandma to be upset.
You're going to be more free. It's not as much stress, I feel like. It depends on how religious you are. I don't have the same issues that some of them would have with family being very religious and turning their back on me.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of people that aren't very religious, or that are Christian, that don't care if you're religious or not. Just surround yourself with those type of people, really.
I would tell them that you can be as whole and as free as you decide to be without God. That it's going to take a lot of time and effort to get there, but soon there won't be any shame or fear, and that you really can find love without God. But learning how to think differently is probably one of the best things you can do to grow as a human.
I'm not going to encourage any recently deconverted person to necessarily become an activist, because I'm well aware of the risks that we take being public people. But I am going to tell anyone who will listen to me for this long, there's hope, and that there's a community out there for all of us.
Just keep asking questions. I think that's the best thing, because your questions will lead you to the truth and will lead you to freedom, I think. And the more you question, the more you Google, the more you ask, where does this lead? Then I think that's the healthiest thing. As soon as you stop questioning, then you get closed-minded. And so the more you question, the more things that you start to study and broaden your sphere of topics that you want to study. I think that's the best thing for people who are deconverting.
Well, I just keep drilling what I've been drilling before. If you feel guilt, fear, and shame, that's not okay. You don't need to, quote, get right with God. You don't, quote, need to pray for more faith. You don't, quote, need to read the Bible more. If you're seeking help and these are the only kinds of pieces of advice you're getting, it's not okay. You're good enough as you are. You don't have to be afraid. If you have guilt, fear, and shame, it's not okay. You are good as you are. Don't be afraid. Just be who you are. You're not going to hell.
Don't be afraid to look, research, go on the internet, read books, like learn about other religions, find somebody to talk to, because I feel like that's important. Find a mentor, maybe an agnostic person, a friend, can be a professor, can be online. There are lots of people online who are willing to listen to you. Just talk to someone and do research. Because for me, doing research, trying to read beyond the Bible was strictly forbidden. Scratch that, ignore it, do research. That's the biggest advice I could give.
Don't give up. And it's okay to have doubts. But remember that if you lose your friends and you lose your family over your convictions, they were never really your friends and family to begin with. And that there's a whole lot of other like-minded people out there who will welcome you and be your friends and family if you ask and if you need it.
Trust yourself, as hard as it is. Trust that voice and look for others to talk with. That's the most important thing that I think I missed out on, is just having a community. And it's so, so important to have other people to express your doubts with.
First of all, congratulations, you're amazing. You are incredible. If you are a person who used to be religious and now you are not, nice work. You have fought that weird thing that seems to grab others so easily. You've come out of it. Now that you're in control of your own life, you can start to research and learn everything that you want, everything that you can. It doesn't matter what it is. You don't need the idea of a God. You don't.
You're not alone. And there's so many of us out there and who've gone through this. And to reach out to others, there's a lot of us out there, and what we've gone through is significant, and we need the support of each other. So I would just say reach out. I would also say, other people who have come through this kind of a thing, they should be proud of themselves for being brave enough and honest enough to go through this process.
Just keep asking questions. It's okay to ask yourself what you want. What do you want out of life, and what do you want out of your experience of consciousness and choice making? It's okay to not know, and it's okay to just be trying to figure it out, to not have all the answers or not know exactly where you stand. Listen to your own, cultivate your own voice in your mind if you've been trying to listen for another one that is not really there.
A lot of times, your instincts and what you feel, the Christian church teaches that your heart is the root of all evil, and it's where evil desires come from. And I think that that's just a lie. I think that a lot of times the things that we feel in our heart, the things that we our instincts can be pretty right on, and just sometimes we do have to follow our heart, and sometimes we do have to be true to ourselves, and it doesn't mean that it's wrong. You live and you learn, and I think by repressing yourself, it just makes it worse. It just makes everything, it just could be very unhealthy.
But I think that you should always be open-minded. Investigating and learning should always be part of the process. Read a lot about philosophy, because that helps a lot. Use YouTube, obviously. I always say in Spanish, habla porque no puede hablar, which translates to speak out for the people who cannot speak out, So if you can come out as an atheist, or if you're able to be more open about it, do so, because that is just going to help other people understand and feel better with themselves. Destigmatize the issue. So I just want to tell people they have to be strong and to try their best just to keep themselves positive and don't think for a moment that just because you don't have God in your life that your life is meaningless. Everybody's going to have an individual purpose in their lives. It's just a matter of you pursuing it. So being positive, being open-minded, investigating, reading are the things that I would recommend for everybody.
It will get easier. It will get better. It's really scary right now, or if you're in the middle of it, thinking, what am I going to do with my life? But that's actually a really fun discovery, that self-discovery of, who you are and who you want to be. And so I would just say that it gets easier.
Just whatever you're believing in, whatever organization you're believing in, know every last thing about it, just as you would do with anything that you're devoting your life to. Know everything. Do your research.
Yeah.
Don't have blind faith. It's not reasonable for intelligent people. Shouldn't be.
I would say, when you're first deconverting, like, give yourself time to be upset, because it's kind of like an information overload, and you're just like learning that so much of the stuff that you believed is wrong, and so give yourself time to be upset, but then eventually just be who you are. You don't have to be Richard Dawkins. You don't have to be an angry atheist. Not that, like, Richard Dawkins is awesome. Angry atheists are awesome, but, like, if that's not who you are, you don't have to try to be that to fit into some preconceived, like, notion of what an atheist is.
What I would say, and what I do say, because these are the members of the Lasting Supper, is just encourage them that, what you've done is incredibly brave. I mean, just incredibly brave. It took a lot of courage to do what you did. And, most people do not do that. Most people conform for their whole lives. They don't want to disappoint anybody. They don't want to be rejected. They don't want to feel silly or ridiculed or whatever. And so what I say to people who've deconverted or, left the church or whatever, that took a lot of guts, and tap into that, because there's incredible energy there, not just to undo things, but to do things. So I just want to encourage you to, you've really tapped into some powerful energy, and to, keep tapping into that, and, make a difference, continue making a difference in your own life and the life of those around you and the world.
At the beginning of the journey, I will say it gets better. Just like the guys that are bullied in high school, don't worry, it gets better. It looks difficult, it's tough, but it gets better in the end. And you are actually, if you're going through it right now, you're actually in a great position, because you have the internet, you have forums, you have Facebook, you have social media. We didn't have that back in the day. We had the internet, yes, but there was not cohesion. There was nothing like the social media, the social networks are available right now. You can go into Xbox Live and find atheists, for God's sake. And then you are in a good position. So I would like to tell them it gets better. For the guys, for the people in general that are already there or already deconverted and went over through that, I will say, good for you.
Yeah.
Consider yourself special.
There are other people who feel the way you do. There are thousands and thousands and thousands. And even in your community, there are likely some. Even if you live in a religious community. If you live near a big city in the United States, guaranteed huge numbers of people who feel the way you do. And you definitely will be able to, have support and kinship in people like that. There's no reason to feel like you're alone at all.
Number one, I'd say to people going through the process, you're not alone. Number two is, you may have been told that you can't trust yourself, right? Like especially in Christian theology, that God's ways are above your ways, and you're dirty rags, righteousness is dirty rags. And so there's all this kind of institutional systemic pressure to not trust yourself. And what I would say to you is, you can trust yourself. That little nagging doubt when you're reading something in the scripture and it doesn't feel right, That's doubt is like your subconscious, being honest with you. And if your morality is stronger than what you're reading in the Bible, that says something in itself. And go ahead and trust yourself and explore those things and believe in your own intellect.
I would tell them just to explore, and that it's okay and not to feel guilty about that they have the right to explore anything that they want. They have the right to settle in that moment if whatever it is they're exploring feels okay for them, and at harm none, do as you will, including yourself. That's what I would tell them. Explore it all. Don't leave any stone unturned, and then you can say you really looked at the full spectrum.
Yeah, I would encourage them to go on, and I would probably ask, if I was talking to that person, I would just start asking what they believed. I still do that. I ask exactly what they believe, and I start, but how isn't that contradictory, or how do you reconcile these things? And I start showing the flaws in their chains of reasoning.
Yeah, just get them thinking about it critically.
Yeah, exactly. Give them stuff to think about.
Yeah, I always say, don't feel in a rush. I know it's tough to live in that discomfort of the in-between, but there's no rush. It's about being true to yourself and knowing what question is really on your mind that you want to answer, and not being afraid of that question, not being afraid to address that issue that you're really concerned about. So maybe it's whether the Bible is truly the inspired word of God. You're nowhere near yet thinking about whether God is real or not. You're just frustrated about the Bible.
Yeah.
Well, deal with that. Dig into some scholarship about where did the Bible come from, who wrote it, how long ago, how well do we know for sure who wrote it and not, and that question will lead you. See, this is the thing. I have a faith in the process. If you're honest and curious, and to me, if you're honest and curious, you will find your way to the truth.
Give yourself permission to not figure it out. I think it's really, really scary to go from feeling like you understand everything to feeling like you understand nothing. And I say this from a place of, this is one of my main struggles, is embracing the uncertainty of life. It's always better to not know than to be positive and wrong.
Yeah.
It's way, way less comfortable though.
Absolutely.
And it's going to be. And the more you can accept that discomfort instead of struggling against it, just be okay, I don't know what the hell's going on. That's okay. It's going to be uncomfortable for a while, but that's okay too. It actually eases that discomfort, the coming to acceptance of just the way that things are going to be a little sketchy for a while, and start doing stuff. It doesn't have to be you don't necessarily have to go out and find a specifically non-religious community to become a part of, but start exploring yourself and go out and do things that you think you might be interested in. And that's a really good way to start building community and start feeling like a part of something. Because I think that's another thing that people tend to lose a lot, feeling like a part of something.
Find community. Especially if you've been in the church your whole life, leaving that is a real challenge. And even those of us that are really strongly introverted need community. And that can take a lot of forms. It can take the form of a UU church. It can take the form of Sunday Assembly or Oasis, or different meetup groups, humanist groups. Heck, it can even take the form of a group of people that get together and drink beer and wine on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But you need those people in your life who, for lack of a better word, friendships. And that's the part of life that's the hardest for me. I pretty much suck at it. So, but it's important to find those. And that's why for us, a built-in congregation where you can have these relationships is good, because making friends is just hard shit to do.
You are not alone. You are not alone. There is a lot of us out there that use the internet, use the research there, but listen to people's stories, the power of story. And, I found that far more helpful than reading intellectual articles about atheism or whatever. Just listen to other people's stories. The stories that you, Steve, have brought together on these podcasts, which have been fantastic, and many others as well. That is the source that I find. So, and watch Doctor Who. Doctor Who is brilliant because the current Doctor, in fact, he's just gone through a transformation. But in one of the previous episodes, he gives some word of advice for one of his companions who's no longer going to see, and he says, "Laugh at everything. Always be kind. Always be courageous. And if you fail, make amends." And I just think, as a life philosophy, that pretty much nails it. Okay, there's humor. Use humor. There's always stuff to laugh at. That takes, there's always comedy to be found. Okay, but never stop being kind.
I would suggest that they never forget what made them make that big decision in their life. Like, never forget why you questioned. Never forget what took you over the edge. Hold on to that, because that's kind of pure. Those things that make you realize, I don't believe this stuff anymore. Hold on to that, and never forget it.
Don't rush. Don't feel that there needs to be a end goal, like, oh gosh, I got to deconvert. No, just slow it down. Most important thing is make sure that you have good reasons for what you're doing. Challenge your beliefs. Just be honest with yourself. Don't feel pressure, don't feel rushed, and find community. Community is important. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask what you think may be stupid questions, because, to be honest, coming out of Christianity, there is no stupid question. I can tell you that much. So,
reach out to other people, because that helps a lot. Talk to people who you are afraid of, according to your belief system. Talk to those people who you aren't supposed to talk to. Read and really trust your gut on this stuff, because your body and your mind, they know what they're doing.
That's awesome.
A lot of ways.
That's great.
First and foremost, I encourage everyone to become assertive and comfortable in their journey, and that it's important to realize that they're stronger than they may think, because when you come out of it, you're very vulnerable. You're very scared. Please know and understand that there are others who have been where you are, and what you're feeling is okay. It's okay to be where you are, especially at that point when you're first coming out of it.
So there you have it, a year's worth of encouraging words. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. It was really fun for me to listen back through to these interviews that I did throughout the last year. And that last quote you heard was from Mandisa Thomas, founder of Black Nonbelievers. She is my guest next episode in 2 weeks, so stay tuned for her interview. But I just want to say thank you again to all my guests that I've had throughout the first year of the podcast. I really appreciate your willingness to come on the show and share your experience. And again, to each of you out there, I really can't tell you how much I appreciate you listening, and it's been so much fun to get to know some of you over the past year. I've really enjoyed meeting some of you and engaging with you via Twitter or through email. And so if any of you out there would like to connect, even just to say a quick hello, I'd love to hear from you. You can reach me, steve@vodpodcast.com, or I'm pretty active on Twitter. So you could reach out to our Twitter handle is @VODpodcast. So I hope to hear from you soon, and I look forward to sharing with you my conversation with Mandisa Thomas next episode in 2 weeks. I'll see you then, and take care.
Thanks for listening to Voices of Deconversion. Be sure to join us next time by subscribing to the podcast. If you'd like to learn more, check out our newsletter at vodpodcast.com.